Nobody said setting goals and achieving them would be easy. I'm pretty sure you all want to create your own space for your goals. So, I warmly welcome you all who join us today through the platform Zoom. To start the proceedings, I would like to invite Udita Veerasinghe, the president of the Gavel Club, to welcome all of you with an official welcome address.
Thank you, Malmi. Good evening to all of you joining with us from all parts of the island and even from beyond our shores. First and foremost, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our resource person today, Mr. Pradeep Kumar, the Senior Vice President and General Manager, HPE PointNext Services, joining us all the way from Houston, Texas. Further, I'd like to welcome Dr. Chamari Hettiarachchi, the co-director of the Career Guidance Unit of the Faculty of Science, and the course director for EC 3015, Ms. Kalpani Anuradha, who is also representing the Career Guidance Unit today. Last but not least, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all our participants, including the students of EC 3015, members, past members, and office bearers of the Gavel Club, and each and every one of you joining with us on Zoom and on Facebook Live. I wish you all a very pleasant and interactive learning experience today. Over to you, Malmi.
Thank you very much. Today, we have a gathering which is consisted of undergraduates and past undergraduates, not only in University of Colombo, but also from all over the island. So, with such a dynamic and diverse representation in our audience, I'm pretty sure you all can't wait to kickstart the proceedings of the meeting. So, to introduce our special guest and continue the proceedings of today's meeting, I would like to invite Vimuktini Chalat, a former president of the Gavel Club of University of Colombo.
Thank you, Malmi. So to introduce our speaker today, Mr. Pradeep Kumar, who has been with Hewlett Packard Enterprise for over 20 years across several business areas and regions, is currently the Senior Vice President and General Manager who leads the HPE's PointNext Technology Services Business Group. Through the HPE's PointNext Services brand, his global services experts play an essential role for the customers of HPE, shaping their strategy, technology planning, and consultant services that help customers navigate their digital transformations from edge to cloud while optimizing cost and experience. Previously, he was the leader of the Global Shared Delivery, a worldwide organization within HPE PointNext Services. Mr. Pradeep holds a master's degree in business from Monash University in Australia and is also a member of the Chartered Management Accountants of the United Kingdom. He is also a past student of Maristella College Negombo and is also a proud Sri Lankan who considers that not forgetting your roots is key in whatever position you hold in life. Mr. Pradeep Kumar, the spotlight is over to you.
Second.
Okay, thanks, Vimuktini. Sorry, I had it on mute, I think. So welcome to everyone. I know it's Saturday and you're getting close to what's for dinner conversation. So I'm really pleased to be here. As Vimuktini said, I run the services division for Hewlett Packard Corporation. Just to give you a context, it's about a $7 billion business. It has got 23,000 employees around the world. So I deal with lots of different cultures, different countries, different gender, geographies, all kinds of things. Nothing that keeps me going like Sri Lanka. You know, obviously I get home 3-4 times a year. I was telling before we started, I still like to eat malupan and sinisambolapan and all kinds of things that of Sri Lankan nature. What we want to do today is talk a little bit about goals, how to set goals, and how to manage as you go out to the world and start working, how to manage the balancing of work with life, right? It's so important. But the whole discussion we want to have is centered around, how I grew up, around what happened with my story, right? So it makes more sense to you. I was just like one of you growing up in Nigambo, obviously going to Maristella, and then all the way through different countries. So I laid through that lenses that'll make it easy, right? At the end, you learn, you go to these lectures, you go to university, you learn a few things in life, and I just want to make sure, I think you give some priority to goal setting. It's such an important thing. So if you listen to 2 hours and if you come out of it, at least if you think, hey, I need to set some goals, that would be fantastic. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so what we want to do is I want to talk about goal setting for about 40 minutes and then have some Q&A in between. If you have any questions, if you want to know anything, we do for about 20 minutes, and then we get on the subject of work-life balance, and we do another 20 minutes on that, right? So okay, so goal setting comes in 2 different ways, right? Long-term and short-term. And it is important to set some goals long-term. And the long-term goals come in many, many ways, right? And then people ask the question, hey, what is a long-term goal? And you are the only one who would know what that long-term goal is, right? And it is very important when you're setting goals, it is your goal, and it's not your parents' goal or your teacher's goal, because you need to be personally involved and not, live through the dreams of your parents or your lecturers, right? In my case, I will go through, how I went about setting a goal, but it could be anything. What I really like you to do is just take a moment and reflect on life and decide, hey, what do you want to be one day when you grow up? I grew up as a only child in my family, and my parents were very, very different. My dad was a very happy-go-lucky person. He did not worry about, and most Sri Lankan men are like that. Don't worry, it'll all work out. So he was very happy. He was very much interested in what is the next bottle of whiskey that the world was going to produce. So that kind of thing. And he really thought, once you have a son, you don't really need to worry. You don't need to collect money for dowry or anything like that. He will grow up and he'll take care of himself. My mom was a teacher. So she obviously was very careful in herself how we went about thinking of the family and the future of her son, right? And so she passed away a few months ago, and I was going through her stuff. My mom and dad had lived in that place for 40, 50 years. So I was cleaning up, how you have the funeral, you go back home, there's nobody, at home. And I was seated in a chair, reflecting myself and saying, hey, what did my mom really wanted me to be? And did I achieve her goals? Did I achieve her dreams? And it's quite funny when you think about it, because my mom always, although she never mentioned this to me, she thought I would be a brain surgeon. And I can't even think of, I really worry about the people who I would have operated on if I was a brain surgeon. But so her goal in life was, just like any other Sri Lankan parent, hey, my son needs to be a doctor, engineer, whoever it is, right? Somebody famous, right? But I did not live through her dreams. I set a course for myself and what I wanted to do. And that is so critical in that I think before even setting goals, I think it is very important for each one of you to, yeah, if you can put it on mute, it'll be fantastic. So I think it would be really good for you to reflect. And with the world today, we are caught up in lots and lots of things, right? We have cell phones, we have PCs, we have iPads, all kinds of stuff. So we always want to be linked in. We want to talk to each other. We want to spend the time. I think the thing I would strongly advise you is take a moment to reflect on life. That is something that we don't do quite often. And it doesn't matter where it comes from. I sit in planes for long periods of time across continents, and that is my time to think and reflect. I look out of the window and think, is that what I want to be? Is that what I want for my kids? Is this what I want in life? I think that's a good way of thinking about setting a goal, right? And goal setting comes in many ways. Maybe you're driving a car and something comes to your mind and you say, hey, that's a goal to set, right? And it could be anything. My only ask is, don't live through your parents' dreams and make that. And you may decide to do that. You may say, hey, my father is a doctor, he owns a practice, and what I want to be is a doctor, and go back and run his practice. That's okay. Or you may think, hey, I want to get married to a rich person. I don't want to work a day in my life. I can be home, have 12 kids. Whatever that dream is, my only ask is set up some goal. It is vital because you will start working towards it. And as I said, goals come in long-term and short-term. If you're a cricketer, you are playing, the game, you want to score a century in the next game. That's your short-term goal. Or you may decide, hey, I want to score 5 centuries in the season. That's good too. So you may have long or short-term goals. You may think, hey, before I finish college, if university, I want to have a boyfriend and I want to get married in 2 years. I want to, have kids in 5 years. Some goal short-term, that's good as well. I think so. Just make sure, take the time to reflect, set some goals, and then you'll be marching towards it. So let me talk a little bit about how I went about, right? So setting up a long-term goal, and you may start laughing about, what happened and what my long-term goal was, right? So as I said, I grew up in Nigambo in a little village called Periamulla, right? It's about 2 miles away. If you're close to that place, you'll know. And the school I studied in was about 2 miles away. And at about 9 years old, I started, just like most Sri Lankan kids, riding my bike to school. And so I would ride the bike to school in the mornings, always late, rushing back through. There's not much traffic, but what happens is the roads have got a lot better, but we would have a lot of potholes on the road. And just like what you see on the screen here, cars will go past you. They will splash water all over you, right, on the way to school. And if you get water splashed on, you're sitting with that water all day long. So you can imagine I would get frustrated about this whole thing. So my long-term goal, you're going to laugh at this, one day to be the driver of that car, in the sense to own a car so that I don't need to be getting splashed, but I'm the one who's splashing water at everybody else. So as a kid at 9 years old, this was my long-term goal. One day to be able to have a car, own a car, and drive. And so my dream wasn't any big deal of becoming a brain surgeon or becoming somebody famous. It was very simple. You want to achieve to get to a car. So again, you can see from this, in a way it's funny, but in a way that drove me to what I did during my college years, during my life. I think going through working towards, hey, how do I achieve my goal of getting a car one day? But it started with a small thought process, riding the bike. So your goal setting is that reflection time when you reflect about what you want to achieve in life. That may be doing some great things for the community, something that will come to your mind, but it got to be your own thing. It can't be somebody else's, right? It can't be your boyfriend's or girlfriend's goal either. So you want to be extremely careful when you set up goals. Okay, short-term goals. This is interesting. I think what drives you on a day-to-day basis is just setting up short-term little goals. Again, it could be of very different nature. And what you see on the left-hand side is an AVIS sign. I'm not sure how many of you know what AVIS is, but it was my introduction to AVIS. So at a young age of 24, I decided to leave the country, migrate to Australia, right? So there used to be a point system. I think it's still a point scale. When you graduate, you go through a point scale, and my parents thought it would be, there was a lot of violence in Sri Lanka and at that time, and my parents thought it would be great for me to go outside. And unfortunately, a lot of parents think of it that way. Hey, my kid goes overseas, it'll be better for them and it'll be better for us, right? So it was one of those things. And my mom's brother lived in Australia, in Sydney. So once I got a permanent residency, they packed me up, and I left Sri Lanka, and I landed in Sydney. And obviously, I was a permanent migrant coming in. My uncle thought I have a lot of belongings that I'm bringing, and I have to clear customs, and it's going to take forever, which was obviously not the case. I had just a little bag with a couple of shirts and pants and a suit. That was it to find a job, right? So I land there, and I come outside. It's a foreign country, obviously. I have never been outside of Sri Lanka, so I had no idea how things work. That's the first time I have been in a plane, so I thought everything was new. You can imagine when you are going through, nowadays, people have a lot more wealth, so they travel a lot more. But at that time, it wasn't the case. So I land there, and I don't have any coins to take a phone call. Obviously, I didn't have a cell phone. I come out, and I see this sign called Avis. And I'm standing there thinking, there's Avis, Hertz, all of them. Later, I realized it's a rental car company. But it was a foreign concept to me, right? I had no idea what Avis was. I was standing there thinking, what is Avis, number one? My whole goal was to go to the Avis counter and say, hey, can I get some coins to make a phone call? And I went in there, asked for some coins. They're like, no, son, sorry, we don't have any coins because, everybody uses a credit card to buy, rental, right? So I realized at that time, my short-term goal was to learn a little bit more about the world. It is interesting because we grow up in a country, in a town, and sometimes we don't know what's going on around the world. So we want to find out, hey, how things work. How are different countries doing things differently? How are different people doing things differently? And we are good at lots of different things. Now I've lived in the United States for nearly 20 years or more. I have realized, we as Sri Lankans are good in very many things, but there's also a lot to learn. So I think the luxury you have is the internet that wasn't available at that time. but still, learning. So I thought, hey, it's good to learn about countries and how it works. That was my short-term goal. On the right-hand side, you see is Sydney Harbour with lots of buildings at the back. And that was, again, when I landed, my short-term goal is to find a job. Obviously, my mom, who's very eager that her son finds a job, he's in a foreign land. But when I landed, so I wanted to work in the city, I wanted to work in a big building. That's okay to have short-term goals, right? It was nice to go in the middle of Sydney at lunchtime because there were lots of shops, a lot of different places to eat. So I imagined this place of, I will work in a big building, come down, have lunch, have lots of friends, have lots of girlfriends, whatever you have. I think, that was all a short-term goal. But what happened to me was my uncle, who was a smart guy who has been working for a long time, he said, son, once you start working, you're going to be working until you die. Until you retire, you work, right? So he said, this may be a good time for you to take a break and see Australia. So he gave me $5,000 and he said, don't worry about your mom. She would want you to find a job, then get married, have kids, the usual parents' desires. Hey, go away and see the country. So I started traveling, seeing a lot of Australia, all the way up to Cape Reinga, lots of different places. I saw more of Australia than in the next, 9 years I lived there. Which was fantastic. But what it also gave me is a lot of time to think and reflect on life and set short and long-term goals. And my dream of finding a job in a good company, and at that time, because also my parents would remind me of what the meaning of life and what to do. And when it comes to parents, don't mix the two up. Don't think when I said, hey, goal setting should be yours to do versus listening to your parents. I think it is important you listen to your parents. They have good advice. They have gone through everything that you're going to go through when you walk out of University of Colombo. And so don't mix the two up. You want to listen to them. They have good advice for you. But when it comes to goal setting and what you want to be in life, it should be your own thing. Even short term, my mom those days would ring every week and she would say, hey, son, have you found a job? And I found it very difficult to tell her, no, I haven't been even looking because your brother told me to go and look around the world. It was a very difficult conversation to have with her. But that said, I think I then started realizing where I want to work. And this is, again, very important when you walk out of that university to decide on what field you want to work in, what are the companies you want to work in. There was Unilever, Lever Brothers in Sri Lanka is a place I really wanted to work when I was even in Sri Lanka. But when I went to Australia again, I targeted Unilever to work because it's something that was familiar to me. And so it is important to realize where you want to work. And that was a compromise because Unilever was not based in the city, they were based in a suburb. So this my short-term goal of working in the city and going to eat at lunchtime sort of disappeared. And this would happen to you as well. You make short-term goals, you compromise on one versus the other, right? A good job versus where you work. The good job may not exist in Colombo, it may exist in Kandana or wherever, right? Or Kandy. So you'll have to make that decision of what is important at that point in time. And my advice is, I think it's more important to have little goals in life, because otherwise you let life take over you, right? And that is not a good way to go about. And you may decide to discuss your goals with your parents, with your husband, your sisters, brothers, your boyfriend, or girlfriend. It doesn't matter. I think you may decide, you may not talk about it. I mean, it's not like a conversation you have, come here, can you sit down and let's discuss my goals. It's a casual conversation of, hey, I think I should be working in this company, or I should become, I'm doing a bioscience degree, I want to become a researcher, and I want to, go overseas, I want to work in England. It's good to have those conversations, because then it sets on a path of what you want to do, and you design life with you. Okay, so it's important to set up short and long-term goals. So did I achieve my goal? Okay, I wanted to have a car. Here I am. But I never forgot. That is something that was always, as a 9-year-old, that was entrenched in my brain. I have to have a car one day. So I go to Australia. I was like 24 years old. A year later, I buy this Ford Escort, what you're seeing on screen. And I felt great about it, right? I mean, first time, can you imagine having your own car? Although, I look back and laugh at it. It was like a 20-year-old Ford Escort. But it was my own car. And it was, the car leaked. The guy who sold me really, played me out. He didn't tell me there was a leak in the windscreen. And whenever it rains, the car got flooded. But despite of that, it was all I had worked for until 25 years of my life, and I had to make sure I had the car and I was free and I could drive around. And it is funny when you achieve the goals after a couple of years, you think, oh my God, is that all I wanted in life, right? But you can look back and laugh at it, but half a century of my life was designed towards achieving what you're seeing on the screen. And there are some lessons out of this for you, right? It could be anything. I think your goal has to be yours, but it could be of anything of nature. It doesn't have to be a car. It doesn't have to be a thing. It may be you say, hey, I want to get married and have 12 children when I'm 35 years old. It doesn't matter what it is. It is yours and yours to achieve. And the most important thing is not only setting the goal, but working towards getting there, right? That's as vital as it is. Okay, let's talk a little bit about setbacks, because you may go and talk to a lot of people, attend a lot of sessions. They will talk about, hey, goals and how to set goals and how to achieve those, how to be very organized. And I'm not an organized person, right? I'm very disorganized. My wife is extremely organized. My mom is extremely organized. But I think there are setbacks in life. And when you're trying to achieve goals, there's setbacks too. And I want to talk about setbacks because I think it's important how you overcome setbacks when those happen, right? And I want to give you an example that related to me in my life, right? So I achieved this goal, obviously, of getting a car. But I had a girlfriend when I was in Sri Lanka, and so I go back when I got a job, because I didn't want to get married without a job. I got a job in Unilever. I go back and I get married. We have a big function, just like regular Sri Lankan functions. Invite 500 people, everybody in the village that you know and you don't. And it's all hunky-dory. Life is perfect. My wife migrates with me to Australia, and we have a nice apartment. I had changed the car by then. Everything was going great. So my next goal is to have kids, and life would be fantastic, right? Have a good job, have nice parents, have got good in-laws. And I don't have any kids. For 8 years, we didn't have kids. And here goes your life all in difficulty all of a sudden. Because as you know, when you call home to your parents, the first thing my mom would ask is, when are you going to have a child? And obviously it was obvious after an year or two, the child is not on its way, but it didn't stop my mom asking me, hey, where am I going to have a grandkid? So here comes a setback, and it is a psychological nightmare to go through, right? And why I'm telling you this personal story is because these kind of things happen that we do not predict. We don't think. We think life is all bed of roses and it's going to all put into place. And you think, hey, I worked hard. I am working on a degree now, and once I get the degree, I'm going to go out there, get a job, get married, do whatever in life. But these kind of setbacks hits you. And if you're married, you're going through this, you're not having kids. I mean, you go to see doctors, you go and see gynecologists, they do all kinds of stuff. They just check you out. They see, hey, is your sperm count right? Is this right? And the more pressure builds on you, because it's also in some way, if they said, hey, there's a problem with you or your wife, it's easy to overcome. If the doctor says, hey, there is no problem, and that adds to the psychological pressure. And if you had any goals in life of next goal you wanted to do, those goals are out of the order because now all of a sudden some setback has crept in. I mean, take the example of, Olympic runners, for example. They practice and practice and practice for years for that gold medal, and at that last minute, at that last 5-meter line, they either fall apart or a hurdler falls on that last hurdle and can't make it that last 5 meters, and that's a huge setback. And that's what happened to me in life as well, saying, oh my God, this is a big setback. And that went on for nearly 8 years. And when the setbacks come in, how you operate is very, very important, right? How you tackle, in my case, I stopped calling sometimes home because that would be my mom's first question. But that doesn't mean, I didn't talk to my mom or I didn't go back home when the time, summer holidays and things like that. And you got to have enough faith in yourself to make sure you operate as who you are. Okay, so tackle the setbacks really well. This is a picture of my family. Obviously, after 8 years, we had 2 boys from nowhere, and my wife conceived all of a sudden. I think because as the years went by, your pressure on yourself went away, right? That itself made you relax. And we had 2 boys in the picture you see. And also here, the point I want to make is you set goals and the goals change over time. And it's no more the car, because you may have achieved the goal or something has changed in your life. You are a different person. You have different goals now. Right? My goal was to have a nice family, but also I always reflected on, what is important to them. As I said at the beginning, my mom, although she never said, hey, son, I would like you to be a brain surgeon, she never ever mentioned to me. I knew that is what she wanted. But in my way, reflecting on it and telling my kids, not something that I wanted them to be, because that would be the worst thing I could do. The one thing I wanted them to be was, really good global citizens, and not worry about this is what they need to achieve in life. They want to be good to the world and to the planet, and not have huge hopes on them on, they want to be a doctor. I want my son to be an engineer. I think that's the worst thing to do. I think you let them, fly away, do different things. So my eldest son, you see on the right hand side, went overseas, did a math degree. He wanted to be his own person, which is great in goals you want to achieve. But you reflect back and mark me, when you're 40 years old, you'll think back. You may go out there and think of some goals you may achieve. I think when you get to 40, you'll think back and say, are the goals relevant anymore? And you will set some new goals, right? And that's the beauty of life. You may set some new goals that we want to achieve. As I was putting down the slides, my wife asked me this question. So, you talked about the car. So what are you going to say if somebody asks you, what car do you drive now? And it is so funny she asked me that question, because I don't even have a car now. I drive my kids' cars because they've got cars, and I feel like there's too many cars at home and I don't need it anymore. And my wife and the two kids have cars, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to use one of their cars, because obviously they've gone to college or university and the car's just sitting there. There's no point having a car. So you can imagine how in life it changes, right? You started out having a car is the biggest thing in life that you wanted to, hey, this is where I am today, and the goals in life has completely changed. This is going to happen to you. So from time to time, you want to reflect on your goal and say, is this goal still relevant? Or do I need to have something else? Because you may have taken a different road. Say, for example, you did a bioscience degree, you wanted to be a researcher, you wanted to go and work in the UK. You come in, maybe UK is not the place for you, or UK doesn't want you, but maybe Canada wants you, or some other place wants you, and then you migrate to that place. So now your goals, maybe you're not a researcher because you got married to somebody and they had enough money and they said, hey, be the house husband or housewife, and let's take care of the kids. So you may have gone in different directions. It doesn't really matter. I think you want to continuously reflect on the things that you do and on the things you want to do. Make it personalized. Make it real. Work towards it. I think it's crucial once you set the goals to work towards this. When the goal becomes irrelevant, set up different goals. And my first point, continue to reflect on your goal and where you are in your life, right? The fast pace of the world is good in many ways. I work for a tech company, so I don't mind you using technology to get better, but at the same time, I think technology is the worst enemy when it comes to taking time and reflecting, right? So just take a Saturday, today's Saturday, Sunday off, just reflect on life. It's important why you're living and what you're trying to do. Okay, so with that, that's the goal setting piece. Hopefully you got something. I'll stop for a minute. I'm going to drink some water while that, if somebody has a question, just shoot, and then we can talk about it, because we want to keep this dialogue. I want to make sure, you get something out of it. And also, it's important to get your views and your thoughts as well. So, and as far as questions are concerned, you can ask me in Sinhalese, Tamil, it's okay. I can speak all languages. So any question, I'm quite ready to answer. So let me stop for a minute and give you the opportunity to ask any question. Can you still hear me, Udita?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Yeah.
Everybody is stunned. Okay. Okay. Nobody has any questions, which is quite interesting. Okay. We can go to the next subject, but let me pause for a minute or two before we go to the next subject.
I have a question, and also, I mean, I don't know if it's a relevant question because it's
Sure, it
kind
doesn't
of
matter.
about talking to parents. I think, for most of us, it's difficult to have any conversation regarding, setting goals in life that involve us leaving the country. I mean, for me, that's a really big issue because my parents don't want me to leave their sites. So do you have any ideas or like any talking points that maybe we could use to kind of frame the idea of in something like that in such a way so that, because Sri Lankan parents are uniquely Sri Lankan, right? So I'm wondering if we had any ideas on how we could maybe approach the conversation in a productive way as opposed to one where they just shut you down.
Yeah. So very, very good question, right? As I said, you can share your goals with your parents, and you may have some goals that you may not share with your parents, and you may wait for the right time to share with your parents, right? So remember that, it's your goal. So it's sometimes it's not a parent could be going through a tough time and you want to have a conversation about you going outside. They're like, oh my God, you're going to leave me and go at this time, right? So I think you want to be careful in how you have the conversation. None of these conversations are easy conversations, right? So for some reason on Zoom, I couldn't see who asked the question, but so I can't.
It was me, Nisheda. I spoke to you before.
Okay, Nisheda. Yeah. Very good question. So I think it is. Let me give you an example, and then let's talk about your thing, right? So my father had passed away about 10 years ago, and my mom was great in good health, but I wanted to have a conversation with her because we had lots of stuff. She's one of those people who Nisheda opened up a bank account in every bank that came in new to Negombo, right? So she's like, okay, there's a rural bank. I've never heard of a rural bank, but Sampath Bank, all these banks came along. How the banks give you incentives to open an account, right? If you open an account, they give you, whatever, 1,000 rupees. And she always got really, interested in making this free money. so she opened an account everywhere. She had like 20 bank accounts and all kinds of stuff, right? So as she got older, I had to have this conversation with her saying, Mom, if you pass away, what do you want to do with all this stuff? What do you want me to do with all the assets you have, your jewelry, your clothes, your, house full of stuff? And we did have a house full of stuff. And your bank accounts. I don't even know what bank accounts you have. You may want to consolidate it. And I'll tell you, Nisheda, that was a very, very difficult conversation to have. I remember first time when I had that conversation, she said, you think that I'm going to die, right? She was straight into my face, said, you think you want me to die? Is that what you want? I said, no, Mom, I don't want you to die, but I want to have this conversation. I said, I already wrote a will at home for me and my wife, because I don't know what will happen to me. I may die before you, right? But it was a very, very hard conversation. But two things out of that, Nisheda, I think you want to take is, although the conversations are difficult ones, I think you have an obligation to let them know that what your thoughts are. There's no harm, right? And it starts the conversation, right? At least it starts a conversation they get to know that these are your goals. There's no harm. And you pick the right time to have that conversation, not in a heated moment. Mom, I'm going to leave you and go overseas. Forget me, blah, blah, blah. But it's nice to have the conversation. Mom, do you know, one day I like to work, overseas, right? And she may have a heart attack, so you need to be careful. But at the same time, I think you may want to have a conversation with her or with your dad about this, just like what I did with my mom. And I didn't expect her to take it in. I mean, it took many conversations. Every time I come home, every year I'll go back home, 2-3 times a year, 3-4 times a year, I will go back to see her. And I would sit and just have the conversation. I'll bring it up. I wouldn't overdo it, but I will say, hey. But what it did was, over time, after about 5 years, she decided to consolidate all the bank accounts, Nisheda, right? And she made it easy. She started preparing. She started getting rid of a lot of the stuff. I mean, we had like dinner sets of 5 dinner sets. Who needs 5 dinner sets in a house, right? So she, but obviously, she got a dinner set when she got married, and she got, she liked something she bought, and it just accumulated a lot. I'm like, I don't even know who these things supposed to go to, right? It is interesting because when she passed away, I was going through, and there was still so much stuff. But I realized, because I had that conversation, it made it easier. She wrote down some of the things who need to go to, right? Similar to that, you definitely want to have the conversation, pick the right time. The other thing I would say to you, Nisheda, is you also want to relook at your goal, right? Because sometimes when you're young, you think going overseas is the best thing that happened, right? And I talk to my wife quite often, sit down and think and say, would we have been better off if we had just stayed home? And one of the things that does is, when you go overseas, you don't have family, right? I mean, we did not have anybody, right? When we moved to the United States, I mean, we had friends, but we had no family, which would mean when your kids grow up, there's nobody to leave your kids. I mean, we don't realize in Sri Lanka, I mean, you basically go and dump your kids with your parents and you go shopping or whatever you want to do. But you can't do all that, right? There's nobody helping you to bring up your kids, giving you advice, making them better kids, making them nutrition, all kinds of stuff. So my whole point is, in this, if a goal that you have is going to affect somebody who you love, you want to have that conversation, right? That is important, even though it may be a hard conversation. Also, they need to know you have this goal because it affects them, right? And they may be looking for, men to give in marriage for you, and, they're wasting their time, right? You may go overseas and find, some different gentleman, right? So you want to be careful with that. The other thing is, I think you also want to go, you can't say, hey, I've set a goal and that's what it is, period, right? I mean, you can't do that. I think this is the point I was making before. I think listening is important. Don't mix the two. I think listen to your parents, and you may have a friend you may want to talk to about, and discuss with a lot of people, Nisheda, right? I mean, how are the people who've gone overseas? What are their thoughts? How do they reflect back, and do they think it's a great idea, right? Because it's easy when you're in Sri Lanka, I mean, to think, okay, I'm going to go somewhere and I'm going to be a free bird, and I'm seeing all these movies of, it's like James Bond, going around. It's not always the case. Okay, you have a lot of, creature comforts overseas, but also, as I said at the beginning, I miss that, simple malupan or kimbalabanis, or, just little things in life. Don't forget that, right? So I think it's important to set your goals. Hopefully this discussion helped. I think, to say, hey, do I want, something different? But yeah, does that help you,
Yes,
Nisheda? Yeah. So
that helps so much. Thank you so much.
okay. Okay.
I
Anybody
think,
else?
yeah, I
sorry,
think
go ahead.
a few people actually had questions, so if they could just unmute their mics and ask, I guess. Anyone?
Or you can type it in the chat box. I can read as well, so it's fine. I'll just give it a minute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, don't be shy. As I said, it's good, and your question may help somebody else as well, and so it's fine. And the other thing is, I think no question is wrong, and it may not be. You may think it may be irrelevant, but it may be relevant to a lot of other people as well. So go for it. Okay, if there is no, so we'll go to work-life balance. Hopefully you have.
So I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sir. So I don't know whether this is like relevant or anything, but I had this goal to go to the university and do this degree that I'm following right now. But I kind of felt like that it's not the thing that I want anymore. So like you said, sir, you said that if you set a goal and you achieve it, and if you don't feel like it, you can change it, change the path that you want. But it's kind of hard, like sometimes it's blank. Sometimes it's really hard to find something that you are really interested in. So it's kind of frustrating sometimes to think about it. I mean, yeah. Something
Yeah. No, go ahead. You finish your question. Yeah.
So yeah, that's what, like, even though you had a good goal before achieving it, but if you feel like it's not the thing that you don't want anymore, changing that is kind of hard. It's kind of hard. Like you don't know how much time that you're going to get for that, and it's kind of frustrating too.
Yeah. May I ask a question? So which year of your degree are you in?
Just still in the second year.
Second year. Okay. Very good. Why I understand your question, and I think it's important. So your goal was to achieve this degree and go and do something else, masters, whatever you wanted to do, right? Work, and you're in the second year, and you're thinking, is this the right goal, right? And reflecting, and it is quite interesting because in the United States, right? So we have a system in Sri Lanka. It's not very easy to change majors, right? I mean, if you're going to do engineering to Karubadda, you can't say all of a sudden I want to do medicine, because I mean, number one, Karubadda doesn't offer medicine, and you can't make that switch, right? Even within engineering, if you're doing civil engineering, it's hard to make that switch to electrical because you don't like it, right? And I think it is quite interesting in the United States. They have recognized this, and they don't follow the same path as we do, and what happens in the UK, right? So you go first year to university, and then you decide on the major, and you can change your major during the first year, which is not a lot allowed. I'm not sure it's allowed in Sri Lanka either, right? But here in the United States, they allow you to change your major, and lots of kids change. So therefore a lot of kids don't get into your situation, or what happens is, in your case, you have certain credits you have built in, you can still change and do a different degree, but you have lesser credits. So instead of taking 3 years or 4 years to finish a degree, it takes 6 more months because you had to follow a few more. So you're in a bit of a pickle. This is my piece of advice, right? Number one, I think it's important for you to take a step back and think, what do I get out of my degree, right? And let me tell you, you get a lot out of an undergraduate degree because that sets you on a path, right? What the future is. And I was reading some research that was done. Basically says nowadays it doesn't matter what degree you have. You may have a business degree, a science degree, a math degree. The kids coming out of colleges or universities nowadays will do 12 different jobs in their lifetime. That's nothing relates to the degree that they did. They come out with the this was an Oxford published research. So Oxford graduates, they have noticed they could come out with a science degree and they become a policeman, right? So not relevant to what the degree was. That's where the world is going. So the world is more seeing the degree as fundamental foundational education they have, and in the future they will change course. So I'm not sure what your concerns about the degree are, but I think I would take a step backwards and think, should I just go through the next few years and finish off the degree? That gives me to set a goal to do something else. Let's say I'm making this assumption. You're doing a bioscience degree and you really like business, and a lot of people are going to doing SEMA. I see you, Vimuktini, did SEMA as well, and then you want to become an accountant, whoever, right? You have, this is your conundrum. You had a goal, you knew exactly what to do. Now your goal, you're not sure about your goal. And there is no harm about questioning your goal and changing the goal. As I said, goals change. Goals are not meant to be. What you don't want to do is, because you're not achieving the goal, you say, okay, that's not a goal I want to achieve. I want to do something else. No, I think what I'm saying is your goals may change depending on where life goes and what you learn in life. I think in this case, you're going through and you're saying, hey, this goal, although I started working towards it, is not the right goal for me, right? So I think at this point, you have two questions. Should I continue on the degree I do, or should I just nip it and do something else, right? Unless, my advice is, unless otherwise you hate doing what you're doing, right? You hate what you're doing and you want to do completely something different, then it's fine. But on the other hand, it's very hard to get into a university in Sri Lanka. You work all hard, you worked on your A-levels. It's a privilege that very few of you, you are the privileged ones from all the people who do A-levels to get into a university. So my advice would be, I would think strongly about that, but change your goal for the future. You may say, hey, as I said, you don't want to be a bioscience researcher anymore. You want to follow a path in business. You can still do that, right? By doing different things and then moving around. The overall Oxford research clearly states that you may want to do something different in life, and it's not a problem. And at HP, when we hire graduates, we don't necessarily always hire a computer science grad. We hire all different kind of graduates because we know they will want to do different things in life, right? So yeah, just think twice, readjust the goal, and walk towards something that's worthwhile for you, right? But no harm in changing your goal.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Very good. Very good. Any last question before we go into work-life balance?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I have this habit of measuring my productivity by the hours I work on it. So I think that's not a very good way of managing things. How can I get over this? And
you'll be very good for HB. Come on, you can manage the productivity of all the people. No, I think this one, I mean, listen out to the work-life balance, what I'm going to talk about, right? And I think it is important to have lots of different interests, and don't think productivity is the only goal, right? My wife is somewhat like that. She would say, did we achieve what we wanted to achieve, right? And what it does is, the only thing that worries me with that approach is you never relax, right? Because you always think, have I done something productive? I mean, she would say, did we do something productive? And part of these things are just like the cleaning the house, right? I mean, she would have like 10 things she wanted to do. The unfortunate thing is we would be part of her plan of the 10 things, and we wouldn't be part of the plan, which is what's happening to you, right? You're thinking, okay, I need to get these 10 things achieved. If I achieved 8, then I'm a failure, which is not the case at all, and you know that. One piece of advice, I think, always, I don't think you want to change yourself. It's a good habit to have, to productive. I look at my youngest son. He's unfortunately just the opposite to you. He doesn't want to be very productive, right? Whereas, I'm trying to tell, and he's doing everything at the last minute because he's not being productive to start with. So you have a really, really good habit. Only thing is, you don't want to overdo that, right? So my advice to you is, take a step back and think of the big picture in what you're trying to achieve. I think that's very, very important, never to forget the big picture. The bigger picture that contributes, whatever you are doing contributes to that big picture. Let's say I'm just going to make this up, right? You want to pass out with a great degree, you want to do a master's, you want to do a PhD, and you want to be a lecturer of University of Colombo, right? And therefore, that is your big picture, which is fine. How does your productivity relate to that? I think it's important to have a balance, right? Whatever you're doing with some interest of other things. Like you may be interested in going to the movie, something very simple as that. So what you should do is, okay, I'm going to do these 5 things, include these, like going to the movies or eating something. I mean, it's quite interesting. I have I'll show it to y'all. It's like a bowl of pool dosi, right? I've ordered it from a Sri Lankan shop. They send it. My productivity is, not to finish it within 2 days, right? I still have that pool dosi, but I do take a few minutes sometimes between meetings just to reflect and have a piece of pool dosi. It brings me back the memories also, although it's full of sugar and I realize it's not good for me. You want to do other things included in your productivity metrics. Do you understand what I mean? You have 5 things to do, include some fun things into your productivity, and you say, okay, did I get these things achieved, which is fantastic, but also, did I go to the movies? Did I go and see my friends? Did I go to, Fab to have a piece of cake? Whatever it is, right? So include other fun things into your metrics and don't sweat over it. Life is not about worrying about stuff. It takes care of itself, right? But you have don't look at it as being a productive person as a bad thing. I think it's good. It's really good. Only thing is, you don't want your whole life run on that productivity matrix, right? So you want to do other things. Okay, let me stop and give any other. My work-life balance section is shorter, so if there is any questions, I can answer.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you give me some advice of how to stay consistent with the goals?
Yep.
Because it might vary with this year, and next year I might have another goal and the first one might go away. So to stay consistent with the goals and not change it every year.
Yeah. So that's why I started out long-term and short-term, right? Long-term goals should not change, right, until you achieve them. If you want to be, somebody famous, right? I'm not sure what degree you're doing. Let's say you're doing a computer science degree and you want to be the next Sundar Pichai running Google, Okay, let's say that's your goal. I mean, there's no harm, right? You may be wanting the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka. That's fine as well. Have a goal. That's your bigger goal, right? That should not change. You should be really working towards it. But you may have short-term goals that may change. And my example of, if you're a cricketer, you want to score a century, and you want to score 5 centuries during the season, and you finish the season and it's a terrible season you may have had, right? You may not have had any scores, any runs on the board at all, which means, as you said, next year's goal may be different to what you said. It may not be 5 centuries next season, but at least 1 century on your home ground next year. That there's no harm in changing that, right? It would be really stupid of us to try to continuously achieve a goal that you cannot be achieved. Say, for example, you had an accident, you broke your hand, and you're trying to still achieve 5 centuries in the season is not the right thing to do. On the other hand, what you said is you should not be nilly-willy changing your goal every time, right? I mean, that's not a good thing. That's not a good goal, right? Therefore, this is my initial point. You want this goal to be personal. It's something for you to achieve. It's not nobody else's goal. It's your goal. And you have to have the conviction to achieve the goal, because nobody is telling you you need to have a goal, or nobody is making sure or measuring you based on this goal. It's you yourself measuring against that goal. You with me? So you can take 2 parts. One is go back again, reflect and say, hey, this is a goal I set up to achieve and I need to achieve. Okay, halfway through bad things happen to me. That's okay. I may push the goal for 1 more year, right? Because it's too hard to achieve. Say, for example, you wanted to have a girlfriend before you leave campus, right? And that, the first girl you asked to go out may say, hey, I don't really like to go out with you, right? Now, all of a sudden, you can't change a goal of not having, I'm not getting married to anybody at all. I'm going to stay single for life. I mean, that would be a stupid thing to do, right? So you may say, hey, I may not achieve that goal in the allotted time. I may extend it by 1 year because I'm going to try harder, right? Something of that nature, okay? So yeah, think about it, reflect on it. You may want to change, you may want to stick to it as well, right?
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, let's go to a work-life balance, right? This is not a topic that's really relevant to you because, I mean, you haven't started working, right? But that said, before you go out there, I think it's a topic I think you want to reflect on. And also it's a topic because you're going to find jobs somewhere. Okay, I haven't put this on presentation mode, okay. Let me try. Okay, so before you go to find a job, I think you want to think a little bit about this, right? Because also that may decide on which company are you going to work at, right? It's important to work in a company that reflects what you want to do, right? Not a place maybe they want you, 7 days a week, 24 hours. That may be not what you want to do. So you want to be careful in picking the right place to work. Right now, if there aren't many jobs, then COVID-19 is not helping you to find jobs. It's a different story. But at the same time, I think you may reflect on some of the things before you join a company. At the same time, life is important. It's short. You want to enjoy life, right? We all are very ambitious, especially when we come out of university with a degree in our hand. When you graduate, you have got that first job. You think you are Superman, right? And you can do anything. And you want to be, as I said, the Sundar Pichai or Satya Nadella of Microsoft, right? So you think, okay, I've got everything. I've got this. I'm going to get there. And which is no harm, right? I think ambitions are good. I think sometimes what happens is it's usually the Sri Lankan way, right? We are very ambitious. We want to buck the system. We want to take all the shortcuts we can. And we sometimes get selfish. I think those are the things you don't want. You want to be ambitious, but not selfish, or not try to buck the system, right? The system is there for some reason, right? When you're on this ambitious mode, I think you want to be careful. And I want to tell you my story in this, right? I came out, I had, and I worked, my first job was at a company called Coopers and Lybrand. They're PwC, Price Waterhouse Coopers now, it's an accounting firm. So Coopers, I got a job. And I thought, okay, I'm great. I'm going out there and I'm working. I'm doing external audits, right? Because I was at that time working towards a CIMA, and I thought, okay, this may be a good platform, right? And the problem with me was I always thought I can do better than my supervisor, right? Who supervised it, I thought he or she is an idiot. I could do a much better job. They don't understand. Why am I wasting my time, right? So the first 2 years I had, first 3 years, I had 6 jobs, because every 6 months I would change the job, because obviously, I'm Superman. I could do my supervisor's job. I'm wasting my time here. I should be going out there and doing a different job. This would happen sometimes to you, right? And you would think, what I didn't realize until later, obviously my supervisor knew a little bit more than what I knew, but try telling that to a 21-year-old. I mean, like, there's no way I was admitting. I would come home and tell my parents, tell my friends, man, this guy is just useless. I don't know why I'm working for him. I'm much, much better, blah, blah, blah. Then I realized, like, when I went for the 8th interview, I'm like, they're like, you don't hang around in a place, do you? You leave in about 6 months, right? So I came to the realization, I need to have a little bit of a balance, not be just so ambitious and wanting, something so bad, right? And again, think a little bit about balancing the two. My advice as you go out, probably the first 10 years, I think the most important thing for each one of you is to learn. Continue that learning during when you're working. It is very, very important. So the work-life balance, you need to rotate it in a way that you spend more time at work and learn, right? As you get older, once you've learned a lot of things, you have become a supervisor, you have become a manager, you can balance out a little bit more of the life. But the first few years when you are at a job, I think what I found is putting in more time in the job, I learned a lot. That said, I'm not saying in any way let your home life suffer. In my case, I put my family as priority number one. And you see some of these things on the right-hand side. I put a plane there. I put in myself, okay, I will always come back home on a Friday, right? So if I'm traveling somewhere around Europe, I always make sure I come back on a Friday. And I always take a flight on Sunday night. So people would go a day early, rest up and go to work. I don't do that. I usually fly out on a Sunday because I can spend the whole weekend with my family. So those are decisions you would make. You would say, hey, is family important, or sometimes my health important? Therefore, I would go a day early, rest up, go to work and, wherever Monday morning, or would I just go Sunday night and just go and have a shower and go to work? And those are decisions you make. My advice is you need to work out what's important to you, right? If you're in a serious relationship with somebody, then you want to say, hey, is that important to you? right? And sometimes it's not big things. Sometimes it's like having lunch. You take lunchtime off and go and eat something outside with your friends, or do you work? And the interesting thing is, I was talking to you about, hey, um, for 3 years I did 6 jobs. Even during that time, I was clear that I was going to enjoy life, right? So if you look at Gold Road, there's so many shops. It was like before we didn't have all this, Fab and Carnival and all those, lots of pastry shops and things like that. When I grew up, is when those shops came up, and I would frequently go to them, and go with friends and just have a pastry. Just little things also matter. So make sure you're balancing the two out, and doing something else. Let me tell the story about this picture. Just like any other Sri Lankan coming into a country, I was very ambitious. I got married, and of course, I was very ambitious of growing the corporate ladder, right? And you get sort of sucked into that, right? I don't think you purposely do that, but you get a promotion and you think, I can do the next one. I can, if I work harder, I could get to the next thing. And that job comes with a company car, so I'm going to work hard as possible to get to that job. And you get to that job and you think, the next job has a company car, which is a BMW and not a local car, and I want to get to that job, right? And you get traditionally sucked in. And I was working for Unilever, and I was I was the controller for Australia and New Zealand, and I'm like, okay, I'm top of the world, I want to do a great job, blah blah blah. You don't reflect sometimes. So the sky is a good, interesting thing. There was a winter day, and my wife was doing a master's at a university in Sydney, and so we had one car that we shared, and so I would work and I would go and pick her up and go home. And I picked her up, and it was year end or month end or something like that. So I drove to the office, and I said to her, those days it wasn't very prevalent to work on the internet. You had to go to the office to get on. I had to submit something to London. So I said, hey, sit in this car for a few minutes. I will go and finish it off, and then we can drive home, right? So she said fine. And so I went to work, to the office, and I'm just working away. You know how you get caught up in the office, and somebody from London is already on, and they're talking to you, and blah blah blah. Before I know, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I realized my wife's in the car, and that's what this one shows. I come back, it's snow covered, and she's fallen asleep, and that gave me the jolt to think, look here, is it all worth it? Is growing the corporate ladder the important thing, right? Is becoming the next Sundar Pichai, is it important for me? Even if I can get there, is it important? Is it all worth? This is not working out. So that weekend, I decided I'm going to leave Unilever and find another job in another company, right? I joined Hewlett Packard. I thought, hey, an American company would be better. So the first interview, and when they offered the job, it was interesting. My conversation with the manager at that time, I said, hey, I'm not going from Unilever to Hewlett Packard for a smaller job, not for anything else. I want work-life balance. I want to take care of my family. And I thought, if I just continue this way, I will end up in a divorce with somebody whom I loved for so long. So these things happen. I think you would go through in life. My serious advice is always balance it out. What you want to do for life, and that may be different things. You may be playing golf, right? Saturdays playing golf is the biggest thing for you, or doing something very simple. But just balance. Make sure that you have a balance in life, and it's not just work alone. But it could be just going out with friends, as I said, to have lunch. Some people are just get so caught up in work, they would not even go out for lunch because, hey, I need to finish off this spreadsheet, or whatever that you have, right? So it's very, very important to prioritize some things in life that make sure it gets done, right? This no way says you should not be fully concentrated on the work and doing a good job at work. I think you should do a good job at work. But what this says is really not forgetting what are important to you. And that may come in different ways. I think the next slide is me cooking. I mean, I love cooking. I love doing different things. Obviously, my wife is a good, cook of Sri Lankan stuff. So I don't try to compete with her because it never ends in a good place, right? You don't want to be competing against your life partner who's very good at, right? So I avoid that, but I do cook different things, and that's my way out, right? So weekends I try to cook different stuff for my kids, and you can see that's why, despite all the travel, everything, unless otherwise I'm in Asia, I always come back on a Friday so I can experiment different things during the weekend. And that's my way of breaking, and it may be completely different for you, and that also doesn't mean you just continue to enjoy life and not do a good job at work, but seriously balance it out. As I said, you would rotate more towards working harder in the first years of your working life, right? So when you come out of university, you start working. I think you want to create a good, stable environment. You want to learn a lot. So if you work, extra hours in the nights trying to learn, beautiful, learn that. Because when you become a manager, I think it's hard if you don't know what your people are doing, right? You can't wing it, and you will get caught. So you just want to make sure you know enough, right? And but at the same time, pick whatever that's your passion, and make sure you pursue those passions as well at the same time, right? And that's very, very important. And another one I want to talk to is, so I really have cooking and traveling. There's some family pictures for me, and you may, because I think what it says is, you can see the kids growing up at different ages. We have been able to, just go to different places, just chill out, because we do work so hard. And I think it is important to sometimes, it's not sometimes expensive holidays at all, but that gives you try to connect with your kids. I think sometimes what you see is, people not spending enough time with their children, or vice versa, children not spending enough time with their parents. I think it is important, whatever that makes sense for you, right? And the family unit may be very different for each one of us, right? I spent less time with my parents, for sure. I think when I consider how much time I spend with my kids versus how much time with my parents spent with me, is, despite of me being the only child, is a lot less, because they had their own interests. They had, I was just, part of the family where, they would have friends over, blah, 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 but that took over everything, right? But I reflect quite often, am I spending enough time with my kids? And despite of all the travel, I would come home, and it's the same way with my mom, right? I would go home despite of it being a long way from, United States from Houston to Colombo is about a 30 hours travel each way. And I would still do it, 4 times during the year, because I thought when she passes away, it's done. It's a matter of reflecting, despite of everything, sometimes that may interrupt your meetings, and I may still do office meetings from Colombo or Negombo. But still, I think it's very important to prioritize things and have a good work-life balance. I can honestly look at my career and say, hey, did I have a good work-life balance? I would say no, because somebody asked me about, hey, what are you going to, say to the kids at the university? And I said, work-life balance. They laughed. They said, you're not the best person to talk about work-life balance. You're like a workaholic. That is so true. At the beginning of my career, I was really a workaholic. And I realized it's not worth it. That's why I'm giving you this piece of advice as an older person, a mature person. I think I don't want you to make the same mistakes I made of really working hard and putting everything to it. And I mentioned to you, the first 8 years we didn't have a child because I was getting caught up in the work and climbing the ladder, traveling, making sure, putting my hand up for every opportunity to get ahead. And that may not be helpful from a family point of view, because I spent less time at home. It's harder to have a child when you're not even there, right? So I think I want you to reflect on these things. Make sure that whatever that's important to you, in this case, for me, the a little bit of cooking, traveling with my family was important. And for you, it may be something very different, and pick that. I think this is always the thing, right? We always ask, what's next? Okay. And it is quite interesting when you go out and start working. And I want you to reflect on this as you go through your career. You first, become a supervisor, you become a manager, and, once you become a manager, and after about 6 months, okay, it's good, I became a manager. Now, when do I become a director, right? You become a director, you think, oh, when do I become the next VP, right? And it's a non-stop thing you would have. And always just take a step back and see, is it all worth it? I think that's a question you got to ask. And success is not about career goals or making money. Success is what matters to you. And therefore, you want to balance out work and life so you have been successful. And for whatever reason, some of the things I reflected, I think the long trips in the plane, I looked at my mom when my dad has passed away and said, what is important to her? Me being there quite often, not having this big funeral after she's dead. It doesn't matter. She's dead. It's not what she's looking for. She's looking for spending time with her child when he's still there, when she's still there. So I think this is a thing to take with you as you go into the world when you graduate. Always think this old guy came and did this workshop, and basically say, hey, do I reflect from time to time? Do I have a good balance between work and life? Am I enjoying? Right? And there may be little things, going to the movies out, very little things, to big things. And please make sure that you do both at the same time. Okay, let's go to Q&A. We are, okay, 9:30. Let's see any questions here.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Pradeep. I'm in second year in my undergraduate course. So
Yeah.
I'm having a startup that I recently started with two of my friends.
Yeah.
So we are working our fingers to wants to make it a success, and we are finding it really hard to balance all these work life and have time to have spend time with family and all.
Yeah.
So, but still, meantime, we want to make our startup a success.
Yeah.
So, how would you advise for a person like that to maintain the work balance and the personal life?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's Yotmini, right? Yeah. Okay. So I can now see. So it's an interesting, it's a very interesting question, right? And the most important thing, Yotmini, is for you to see what is the priority, right? Is this, success of the startup your priority, right? Because as soon as you pick one, the other ones are going to suffer in some way, right? Time with your parents is going to be a lot less. Time with your friends is a lot less, right? And as I said, you are in a career point. You want to finish off your degree. You have the startup and your family, three things, right? So you want to prioritize which one is important. And you may think, okay, I don't need a degree with a first class honors, but I want the startup to be my number one priority. I am okay with a degree with a second class. That's okay for me, right? So you start prioritizing, but you need to be very clear in with the startup to say, okay, what is my goal with the startup, right? And maybe I want to achieve, 100 million rupees in revenue, whatever, right? And you say, that's my number one priority. Number two is definitely I worked hard to get to the degree. Therefore, I need to finish off my degree. Third thing is I want to keep some level of engagement with my family. So I attend, definitely the weddings and funerals and things like that I want to be there. You don't want your parents going out and saying, oh, my daughter is not coming because, she's too carried away with the startups, right? Something that you find is minimum to keep that relationship, right? This priority list, I did it for you. I have no idea, right? It's just hypothetical, right? So the first thing out of this is you prioritize which one is more important. The second thing is how much time or, what is the goals for each one of those, right? If you achieve these, I'm happy with it, right? You can't compromise on those, right? Because if you say minimum I need to do is attend all the weddings with my family, you can't say I have a big deal for the startup and not attend. Are you with me? Or your priorities may be different. I think the most important thing in life for me is you may say, hey, make sure my mom and dad are happy. They worked hard. They got me to this place. Therefore, I need to spend. That may be your number one priority. Number two, maybe the startup. Number three, maybe your university degree. Either way, I think prioritize it and see how you can do. And be honest to yourself. You have 24 hours in a day. You can't do everything. That's the reality. You prioritize. I mean, work-life balance is all about prioritizing one over the other, but not going 100% on one and giving everything out. In the sense, you're not saying, I am doing a startup. I'm not going to talk to my parents for the next 2 years, period. That probably doesn't work, right? So you may say, I'm going to work up on the startup 80% of the time. 20% of the time, I'm going to spend time with my parents. This is sort of somewhat similar to what I did. I dedicated a lot of time to work because that puts food on the table. My wife doesn't work. And therefore, I had to make sure, I had food on the table, number one. But secondary is 20% of the time, I made sure that, I had, I spent time with my family. Does that make sense, Yatmini? So you got to prioritize and decide how much.
Yeah, thank you. The thing is, actually, my parents are not happy with the time that I have allocated for them. They want me to spend more time with them instead of working in front of a laptop all the time. So
So that is a very good point, right? I mean, you can't make everybody happy. So there will be But I think the important thing, Yadmini, is to have that conversation with your parents. Say, hey, don't always think they're stupid, they don't understand, I've got to start up, blah, blah, blah. Have that conversation. Calm down. I think first just to calm down and say, whoever who's weak in your family, right, mom or dad, I mean, you approach the person who's a little bit weaker and cares a little bit more about you and say,
Yeah.
hey, mom, it is very important to me this startup is successful. I don't know whether you had this conversation, but I think you can, right? And then, Yadmini, I think it's important because I have got the kids and I feel the same way is, okay, I'm not going to be on my laptop when we are having dinner. Or I'm not going to be on my laptop when my mom wants to speak to me about what your future is. She may have, 5 potential, husbands that she want to line up for you, right? So I think you want to just have an honest conversation and say, hey, I want to do this startup for 2 years, but dedicate enough time for her. And as I said, it may be during meal times. I don't want my kids to be on the phone at meal times because, I'm like, guys, we got to spend talking to each other, right? And I think COVID-19 probably has given you enough, little bit more time to bond with them. And I would utilize that time to bond a lot more, because when you go back to university and go back and spend more time on the startup, then you can balance it out. You can say, hey, mom and dad, I did spend a lot of time, remember? Now I think for the next 2 years, I got to spend a little bit more time on this startup and I need it to be successful. And don't forget, it's your daughter who's going to be successful, and I'm going to be famous, and I'm building the next Uber that's coming up. And remember, if I build this Uber, or Pick Me or whatever you have, I'm going to be very famous. Your daughter is going to be on TV, right? On Rupavahini and ITN and all the channels. So, you need to be able to convince people, and that will help you when you go and find jobs as well, right? Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. Very good, Yasmini. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No worries. Any other questions? So we can, goal setting, work-life balance, or anything you want to talk about, we can. We probably have got 10 more minutes, and then I'm sure you're getting hungry. So we'll give Udita 10 minutes at the end.
Hello.
Yes.
I have a question, but I don't know whether this is a good question or not.
Go ahead.
Does being not productive is a bad thing? I mean, because I didn't take anything so serious, I'm not really into responsibilities. I just accepted whatever I face, but still, is it harm my future? I mean, future life, since my parents say so.
Yeah. So do I pronounce your name correctly? Navoda? Is that how you pronounce it? Navoda. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I probably is not the best person to advise, because I'm the most disorganized and I never listen to anything, and I did, I let life take away, right? So, but looking back at it, I think that this really, Navoda, there's no really right or wrong way of going about life, right? So I think what you did, because your parents thought, majority or absolutely 100% of the parents do things for you because they think they're the right things for you. They're not going to propose something that's bad for you. So that universally, they're always. The question would be, is that what you want to do, right? Is that what you will be happy in life, right? So I would be like, okay, life has taken you in different paths. They helped you, and you are at university now. And so you are in a really good place, right? The thing for you to question is, okay, I'm not the most organized person, and overnight you are not going to be Navoda. I can assure you, you're not going to be the most organized person tomorrow morning when you wake up, right? Yeah. But I think the best thing to do is to just reflect on yourself and say, everything up to now, what I have done, is it in line with the goals I want to achieve? So I would ask, what do you want to achieve, right? And think, am I doing things that's going in the direction? It may not be perfect, but at least is it going in the direction you want to achieve? Let's say you want to become a dancer, or you want to become an artist. That's what you want to do, or a comedian, or whatever. And here you are doing a degree in something, right? Let's say physical science or something like that. And then you say, okay, how does the two match, right? Now, if that is the case, you will say, okay, I'll still do my degree because it gives me a fundamental qualification that'll help me. And then when I graduate, I'm going to pursue a career in dancing, right? Whatever. So I think it's up to now, everything has gone well for you, Navoda. I think what you want to do is think about where the future is going to be. And if it is in line with what your parents think, I think it's nice to let the parents know. Even if it is not in line with what the parents think, you have to have that conversation fairly quickly, right? Mom and dad, I mean, this is what I thought, I want to be so and so. What do y'all think? Right? I think the mistake that, kids usually make is, approach the parents and say, I mean, I want to, stop doing this, but I want to be an astronaut in 5 years. Right? They're like, Dua, this is not going to work. Right? And so the better conversation to have is, okay, I thought about my life and I have done everything for you up to now. And maybe I need to think about how to become an astronaut in 5 years. What do you think? You with me? The conversation would be a very different conversation. And then you get them involved, just like they have been involved up to now with your life. I mean, you want to get them involved in your goals. You with me? I think they would be very open to that kind of conversation, right? I mean, they have brought up a good daughter up to now, so they'll be open. Yeah? Make sense?
Thank you.
Okay. And don't worry too much about organized versus not organized. Some people are inherently very organized. I mean, good for them, right? You also want to get a little bit more organized and let life, take its course, right?
Okay.
But yeah. Okay. Very good.
Hi, sir.
Vishani, go ahead.
Yeah. So, sir, I recently finished my undergraduate degree, and I have started working 3 months before in a very renowned company in Sri Lanka.
Okay.
So but these days, and also, even though I'm in the probation period, I got the chance to work with the UK client, actually the client of our team. So okay. He's a research head. He's one of the best research personality in the UK. So I got the chance to work directly with him as well, even though I'm in the probation period. But these days, I'm working some days 12 hours. Some days I work more than 12 hours. So I feel really tired and frustrated sometimes, and I feel why the hell you have chosen this field? So basically my degree is on statistics, so I'm working as a trainee data scientist. Yeah. So sometimes I feel why the hell I ended up with doing data science. And also, let me tell you a small incident happened recently. So I have to send some deliverables to my client, and I have to have a call with my client 30 minutes before. But 30 minutes before, my supervisor checked my work, and he found a really big. Actually, that was a carelessness of mine. Myself, and so he found a really big issue in that my file. So but I haven't best thing is I haven't not sent that to my client. So my supervisor checked, but my supervisor is really awesome person. He didn't tell a word to me, he just corrected it quickly, because after 30 minutes we will be having a call with him, and we have to send the files to the client. So I got even though my supervisor didn't tell a word to me because of my error, but I felt really guilty, and I felt I'm not suitable person to
work in this field, and I'm not good enough to carry out in this field, and I feel like how can I tell you? I feel like really frustrating, and also I don't like, most of the time I don't have time to like I'm taking my lunch at 6 p.m. most of the time, or after that, and I don't have time to talk with my sister even. Like I have kind of a like unbalanced life these days, so I need a little bit of advice from you. I know I'm a early person starting my career, but I know I have to learn a lot. But still I feel this frustration.
Yeah. So I can only correlate to some of the things I have done, Bishani, right? So I think, as I said, let me talk about the great things you have got, right? You have got a great degree. Statistics degree is a cool degree to have nowadays. The job you want to be becoming a data scientist, I think you know very well, it is the premier field that you have got, right? So people will kill to have a job like what you have in a great company where there is so much opportunity for learning, right? In a field that's going to pay dividends, right? And especially if you look at the United States, I mean, there are less females in that data scientist field as well, right? So, you know, your opportunity is in front, right? I mean, I started writing out, you have a great company you're working for, you have a lot of learning experience, you have a great supervisor, you are in a field that's going to thrive in the future, right? So all those are good things, Bishani, for you to look at, right? Now, your point is, hey, I'm working like mad and I don't have enough time to spend with your sister, right? So if I summed it up, that's your point, right?
Yeah.
I would say this is exactly my point about work-life balance and where you are in your life, right? You are at the beginning of your career. You want to be on a learning mode. If I understand correctly, you are learning a lot, right? And therefore, spending 12 hours is really fully worth it, because all the time you are learning. You're learning a new field because you're just 3 months into it, right? So you want to capitalize on that as much as possible, right? So the first 2 years I worked at Unilever, I probably worked 14-day every day, including Saturdays, right? I mean, I worked like my butt off to make sure. My whole point was there, Bishani, to learn. If I wasn't learning, I would have left the company and gone, right? But I was learning about so many different things, right? So you are in that mode. My advice is learn as much as possible. Number 2, guilty. You should not feel guilty about making a mistake. You don't want to purposely go and screw something up, but you should not. That's the advantage working in a big company or reputable company. You learn, you get the opportunity to learn by making mistakes, Bishani. So I would not feel guilty at all, right? I would think to myself, how do I make self not make that mistake again? But beyond that, I would not feel guilty at all. The company really value is for you to learn from mistakes. So it's fine to make a mistake. I think the most important thing, when you make a mistake, never try to hide it. Say, hey, this is what it, especially when you have a great client and a great supervisor. I think the point you want to make is, hey, this is the mistake I've made. I want you to know, and be open about it straight away. Because I'm a manager, when somebody makes a mistake, I want to know straight away, right? Because I don't want the mistake to affect my client. So do that, and which you have done, which is perfect. Your only problem here is not being able to spend time with your sister. I think my advice, I would do 2 things. One is say, hey, I'm going to spend half an hour or 15 minutes on the phone every day to my sister, right? And I would call her and say, look here, I'm going through this, I'm on probation, blah, blah, blah. You may already have had that conversation with her, but say, hey, therefore the interactions are going to be less, but I'm going to make sure every day at 4 o'clock in the evening, I'm going to call you and have a chat, and we are going to share what happened during the day every day. Or when you get home every day, you say maybe she's gone to bed already, but just make sure you don't let that relationship go away or the relationship suffer. If she's a great sister like you have got, she will understand. Most of the time, I think we don't have those conversations, right? If you have those conversations, hey, it's not that I don't love you, but the problem is I have got this thing hanging around my neck, and I want to become the best data scientist in Sri Lanka, whatever, right? And therefore you need to be understanding of me. I'm only going to call you 15 minutes every day. I don't have that time to gossip for 2 hours, which I used to do, and talk about every girl and what they were, what their dresses were anymore. I'm going to put that in the back burner. Maybe during the weekend on Sundays, we can have the chat about that. You with me, Bishani? I think that's what it is. So going back, I think make use of this opportunity and learn as much as possible. Don't worry about working the 12-hour days. If you take in the United States, a data scientist would work, easily 14 to 16 hours a day, right?
Yes.
So you just have some context, right? Because in this world nowadays, it's about a competition, not with the people in the United States, in Sri Lanka, but you're competing with people around the world. And guys in Bangalore are ready to sleep in the office and kill for a job like yours. You with me? So you're competing with those guys, right? So okay. Very good.
Sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your advices. It means a lot for me.
No worries. Yep. Okay. Let's take one more question, and then Udita, you may want to close out, right? One more question. Anybody has a question? Everybody's hungry. What's for dinner? Is it string hoppers, pittu, dosa, idli? I can keep on listing.